People don't fail because they're not smart. They fail because they're unskilled. Let's be real. The life you're dreaming of will not yield itself to wishful thinking. It will only surrender to those who are skilled enough to claim it. This isn't a motivational speech. This is a transfer of power. Emotional discipline is the invisible armor that separates those who lead from those who follow. It's not about denying emotion, but directing it. Most people are emotionally impulsive. They explode when they should be still, and they retreat when they should lean in. They allow anger to burn bridges that patience could have crossed. They allow fear to cancel opportunities that courage was ready to claim. Emotional discipline is the skill of owning your reactions rather than being owned by them. In life, emotions will rise. That's a fact. But the question is, who's in charge when they do? Is it your purpose or your panic? Your wisdom or your wound? Too many people react without reflection. Something happens. They hear a criticism, face a challenge, feel overlooked, and they immediately lash out, withdraw, or spiral. That's not power. That's slavery to feelings. And here's the truth. If someone else can control your emotions, they can control your decisions. That means they control your future. Emotional discipline is not natural. It's trained. You build it the same way a warrior builds muscle, through practice under pressure. You don't develop it when things are easy. You build it in the storm, when every part of you wants to explode, and instead, you choose to breathe. You want to yell, but you ask a question. You want to quit, but you take one more step. It's those moments, those internal victories, that build an unshakable person. Imagine this. You walk into a room full of chaos. People are arguing, emotions are flying, energy is tense. Most people get swept up in it. They add to the noise, but a disciplined person, they walk in and change the temperature. Why? Because their peace isn't negotiable. Their mood isn't determined by the environment. It's governed by mission. That kind of person doesn't just survive conflict. They transform it. That's what emotional discipline does. It makes you a thermostat, not a thermometer. A thermometer reflects the environment. A thermostat sets it. And the world doesn't need more people reacting to everything. It needs leaders who can respond with clarity. Emotional discipline gives you that power. This skill is even more essential in relationships. Without it, every disagreement becomes a war. Every tension becomes a breakdown. But when you have control over your emotional responses, you listen differently. You speak with intention. You know when to pause. You don't say things you'll regret later because you're no longer reacting out of ego. You're choosing from a higher level of awareness. That's how trust is built. That's how connection grows. In business, emotional discipline is a competitive edge. Think about the people who make the worst decisions. They're the ones who let emotions run wild. Fear makes them play small. Greed makes them reckless. Ego makes them blind. But the most successful people don't just know what to do. They know when not to react. They know how to pause when others panic. They think strategically while others get emotional. That gives them leverage. That's what gives them influence. And let's not pretend it's easy. Emotional discipline takes training because your mind is wired for survival, not success. Your brain's default setting is to protect you from pain, not to help you grow. So it will try to escape discomfort. It will tell you to lash out when criticized, to run when rejected, to isolate when triggered. But if you follow that instinct, you stay stuck in cycles. You replay the same situations, feel the same frustrations, and wonder why nothing's changing. Change begins when you realize this. Your first emotion is not your final answer. Just because you feel angry doesn't mean you need to act angry. Just because you feel fear doesn't mean you're in danger. Just because you feel hurt doesn't mean you're broken. Emotional discipline is the space between the stimulus and the response, and in that space lies your growth, your wisdom, and your strength. Training emotional discipline is about mastering the pause. It's choosing not to speak in the moment you feel most emotional. It's asking yourself, is this response aligned with who I want to be? Before reacting. It's being slow to anger, quick to understand. It's breathing when your ego wants to shout. It's observing your emotion without obeying it. That's not weakness. That's supreme power. Emotional discipline doesn't mean you suppress how you feel. It means you express it in ways that serve your future, not sabotage it. It means you recognize the fire without burning down the house. You still feel, but you don't fall apart. You still care, but you don't collapse. You still react, but only after choosing the most empowered way to do so. And once you start mastering this skill, everything changes. People trust you more. Opportunities open because people know you're stable. You attract healthier relationships, make sharper decisions, and build a life based not on reaction, but on intention. Emotional discipline is not about pretending to be calm. It's about being centered enough that no matter what shakes around you, nothing shakes within you. Communication power is one of the most underrated and misunderstood skills a person can master. People often assume it's just about talking, but talking is cheap. True communication is about connection. It's about transferring clarity, confidence, and conviction through your words, your tone, and even your silence. The difference between someone who influences and someone who is ignored is rarely intelligence. It's how they communicate. You can have the greatest ideas in the world, but if you can't communicate them effectively, they die with you. You can be filled with wisdom, insight, and solutions, but if your delivery lacks power, your message gets lost in the noise. Powerful communication isn't about saying more. It's about saying what matters with precision and purpose. It's about speaking in a way that reaches not just ears, but hearts. Communication is how wars are started and how peace is restored. It's how deals are closed, trust is built, and vision is cast. People follow clarity, not confusion. They don't just hear what you say, they feel how you say it. Every word you speak is either building a bridge or burning one. Every conversation is either making you more respected or more forgettable. The power of your voice determines the weight of your presence. When you enter a room, your energy speaks before you do. Your tone introduces you before your words even land. That's why communication power goes beyond vocabulary. It includes your posture, your timing, your eye contact, your intentional pauses. It includes knowing when to speak, and just as importantly, when not to. The strongest communicators aren't the loudest. They're the clearest. They speak with direction, not just volume. In personal relationships, communication power builds intimacy. It's not about winning arguments. It's about creating understanding. The reason most people clash is not because they disagree, but because they misunderstand. They listen to respond, not to understand. They talk to defend, not to connect. But real communication requires humility. It requires listening without judgment, speaking without attacking, and expressing truth with love. In leadership, communication power is non-negotiable. If you can't communicate vision, no one will follow. If you can't communicate boundaries, no one will respect them. If you can't communicate direction, your team will drift. A leader who can't communicate leaves a trail of confusion and burnout. But a leader who communicates with clarity and conviction sets the atmosphere for excellence. Their words create movement. Their presence creates momentum. Communication also includes silence. Silence, when used with wisdom, is one of the most powerful communication tools available. It can disarm aggression, invite reflection, or draw attention to what's unsaid. Most people fear silence because they equate it with weakness. But silence, when intentional, is strength. It gives your words weight. It forces others to lean in. It lets people know you don't need noise to prove your worth. Another aspect of communication power is adaptability. You must know your audience. The same message can be heard as inspiring or insulting depending on how you frame it. You don't talk to a child the same way you talk to a CEO. You don't pitch a product the same way you share a story. Communication power means you know how to switch gears, shift tone, and shape your message without diluting your truth. You must also master timing. Saying the right thing at the wrong time is still the wrong move. Timing can determine whether a truth liberates or wounds. Great communicators are emotionally intelligent. They sense the moment. They know when to wait, when to press, when to affirm, when to confront. Their words are not just accurate, they're appropriate. They land when hearts are open, not when walls are up. Even in conflict, communication power determines the outcome. Most arguments escalate because both sides are trying to be right, not real. But power lies in the person who can stay grounded, speak truth without venom, and listen without ego. It's not weakness to de-escalate. It's wisdom. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say in a heated moment is, "Help me understand." That's not surrender. That's leadership. Mastering communication doesn't mean you speak perfectly every time. It means you speak intentionally, authentically, and with a clear sense of outcome. You speak to bring light, not just heat. You speak to build, not just impress. You don't use words as weapons to wound. You use them as tools to lift, guide, and move people. Your life will rise or fall based on how well you communicate. Whether you're in business, ministry, family, or friendship, your voice is your currency. People buy into your energy before they buy into your message. So speak with purpose, speak with alignment, and speak like every word you say matters, because it does. Financial intelligence isn't about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep, how wisely you multiply it, and how deeply you understand the game it plays. Most people are working hard to earn money, but never take the time to learn how money actually works. And that's why they stay stuck. You can be talented, educated, and hardworking, but if you lack financial intelligence, money will keep slipping through your fingers like water. People think financial struggle comes from a lack of income. In most cases, it's a lack of understanding. A raise won't fix poor money habits. A promotion won't cure financial fear. If you don't respect the dollar, more dollars won't help you. Financial intelligence means knowing the rules of money, how to earn it, save it, invest it, protect it, and pass it on. It means using money as a tool, not treating it like a trophy. Many were taught how to work for money, but very few were taught how to make money work for them. That's the trap. The system trains you to trade time for money, locking you into a cycle where you depend on your next paycheck to survive. But real freedom starts when you stop working just for money and start building systems where money starts working for you. And that shift only happens through financial education. You need to understand income, how to create multiple streams, not just one paycheck. You need to understand expenses, how to differentiate between wants and needs, between spending and investing. You need to know the difference between assets and liabilities, what puts money in your pocket versus what takes it out, Financial intelligence demands that you look at every dollar like a soldier. It must be assigned a mission, or it will wander and get lost. Most people don't budget because they think it limits them. But in truth, budgeting is what empowers you. It gives your money direction. Without a plan, your money will always serve someone else's dream. The person with a vision for their finances will always control the person who's living by impulse. If your emotions lead your money decisions, you will always be broke, even if you earn well. Financial intelligence also includes understanding credit, debt, taxes, and risk. Many people avoid these topics because they seem complex or intimidating, but ignorance is not innocence. It's expensive. What you don't know about interest rates, inflation, or compound growth can cost you years of progress. And in today's world, being financially illiterate is a liability you can't afford. Debt, for example, is not evil in itself, but it becomes dangerous when used without strategy. There's a difference between consumer debt and strategic debt. Buying things you can't afford to impress people you don't even like. That's a trap. But leveraging debt to acquire assets that produce income, that's a strategy. Financial intelligence helps you know the difference. Taxes are another area where most people lose money without realizing it. The wealthy don't just make more. They understand how the tax code works. They don't cheat the system. They use the system legally and intelligently. They structure income, build businesses, and invest in ways that reduce their tax liability. That knowledge is available to everyone, but only the financially curious go looking for it. Investing is where money begins to grow without your daily effort. But again, it requires education. You can't throw money into stocks, real estate, or crypto based on hype and hope. Financial intelligence means you study the game, you understand risk, you diversify. You learn how to evaluate value, timing, and opportunity. You build for the long term, not for overnight thrills. Generational wealth is another result of financial intelligence. It's not just about leaving money behind. It's about transferring wisdom. It's teaching your children how to think about money, how to steward it, how to multiply it, and how to stay free. Without financial literacy, inheritance becomes a curse, but with it, it becomes a legacy. Your relationship with money reveals a lot about your mindset. If you fear it, you'll repel it. If you worship it, you'll be owned by it. But if you understand it, you'll be free. Money is not emotional. It responds to structure, strategy, and stewardship. And once you understand its language, you no longer chase money. You attract it, manage it, and grow it intentionally. The truth is, you don't need to be a math genius or a stock expert to be financially intelligent. You just need to care enough to learn, read the books, take the courses, ask the questions, make the small changes, watch your habits, track your spending, build a plan, because money doesn't stay with those who simply want it. It stays with those who know how to respect it. And when you gain financial intelligence, you gain not just wealth, but peace, freedom, and power. Time management isn't about doing more, it's about doing what matters most. Every person is given the same 24 hours in a day, but how those hours are used determines everything. The difference between mediocrity and mastery isn't time, it's intention. Most people don't lack time, they lack clarity, discipline, and focus. And without those, time slips through your fingers and leaves you with regret disguised as busyness. Time is not just a resource, it's a weapon. It can be sharpened and aimed. It can be wasted or wielded. When you begin to manage your time like a general commands an army, everything changes. Your schedule becomes your strategy. Your hours become investments. Your calendar becomes a weapon of war against distraction, delay, and defeat. The problem is that most people treat time casually. They treat it like a renewable resource when it's the most limited one we have. You can get more money, you can build more connections, you can even recover from failure, but you can never recover wasted time. Every moment you spend without purpose is a moment you gave away without a fight. And when you live like that long enough, you look back and realize you've climbed the wrong mountain. People who manage time poorly often complain about not having enough of it. But the truth is, time management is not about squeezing more into your day. It's about cutting out what doesn't belong. It's about removing the unnecessary so that the essential can rise. It's about understanding the difference between what is urgent and what is important. Because urgency creates stress, but importance creates legacy. There are only a few things each day that truly move your life forward, but without focus, you'll end up responding to everyone else's emergencies instead of building your own future. Your time should reflect your vision. If your goals and your calendar don't align, your future is being robbed by your present habits. The enemy of greatness is not failure, it's distraction. And distraction will always feel easier than discipline, but it will cost you far more in the end. When you treat time like a weapon, you begin to defend it. You stop allowing everyone and everything to interrupt your flow. You set boundaries not to be rude, but to be effective. You say no without apology. You guard your mornings, structure your evenings, and protect your thinking time like your life depends on it. Because it does. Clarity requires space. Creativity needs room, and growth demands consistency. High performers don't wait to feel motivated. They schedule their priorities and then follow through regardless of how they feel. They understand that feelings are fleeting, but discipline compounds. They build routines that pull them toward purpose and away from procrastination. Time becomes a tool, not a trap. You also begin to use time differently when you understand seasons. Not every season is for planting. Not every moment is for harvesting. There are seasons to build, seasons to rest, seasons to grind, and seasons to reflect. People who fail to recognize seasons misuse their time. They're resting when they should be working and grinding when they should be planning. But those who discern the season, therein know what to give their energy to. They don't waste time on what doesn't match the moment. Time management also involves managing energy. It's not just what you do, it's when you do it. You need to know when you're sharpest, when you're most creative, when you're most focused, and protect that time for your most important work. Stop wasting your peak hours on shallow tasks that don't move the needle. Start building your day around your natural rhythm. That's not laziness, that's strategy. Another key to mastering time is tracking it. Most people don't even know where their time goes. They say they're busy, but they can't prove it. Start tracking your hours like you would your money. Audit your week. You'll be shocked at how much time is slipping through your fingers. The scroll, the calls, the pointless meetings, they add up, and every minute spent on what doesn't matter is a minute stolen from what does. You must also stop romanticizing busyness. Being busy doesn't mean you're being productive. It often means you're being reactive. Productive people don't fill their days. They focus their energy. They don't measure effort. They measure progress. If your day is full, but your purpose is empty, you're just moving in circles, and circles don't lead to elevation. They lead to exhaustion. Time management is ultimately about vision. If you don't know where you're going, you'll waste time in places you were never meant to stay. But when your vision is clear, your time becomes sacred. You no longer drift. You decide. You no longer survive. You build. because time, when managed like a weapon, doesn't just keep you organized, it makes you unstoppable. Strategic thinking is the ability to see beyond the moment, beyond the noise, and beyond the obvious. It's what separates those who react from those who respond with purpose. Most people live their lives playing checkers, fast, impulsive, one move at a time. But the winners, they're playing chess. They're thinking 5 steps ahead. They're not just moving, they're positioning. Every decision they make has intention behind it. Every step is part of a larger picture. Without strategic thinking, even the most talented person can stay stuck. Talent may give you an advantage, but strategy gives you direction. Without direction, effort gets wasted. You can run hard in the wrong direction and still end up nowhere. But when you apply strategy to your vision, your energy becomes precise. Your action becomes focused. You stop chasing everything and start choosing what really moves you forward. Strategic thinking starts with clarity. If you don't know your target, you can't hit it. If you don't know your values, you can't protect them. If you don't know your boundaries, you can't defend them. A strategic mind begins by asking deeper questions. What do I want to create? What are the real obstacles? What are the patterns I keep repeating? What plays haven't I run yet? Strategic people are not reactive. They're reflective. They don't rush into decisions. They step back to see the whole field. In business, strategic thinking is the edge. It's what allows a company to rise while others are falling. It's not just about being busy. It's about being effective. Strategic leaders ask, what is the outcome I want? And what is the most efficient way to get there? They don't get seduced by distraction. They don't chase hype. They execute with precision. Every action aligns with the mission. They build systems that work even when emotions shift. In relationships, strategic thinking helps you navigate conflict, align values, and protect your peace. Instead of reacting to every offense, a strategic person evaluates the situation. Is this person worth the energy? Is this fight worth the fracture? Is this conversation going to build or break something valuable? A strategic thinker chooses their words and battles wisely. They don't respond to everything. They respond to what matters. And in doing so, they protect their emotional and mental clarity. In personal growth, strategic thinking helps you outmaneuver excuses. It forces you to plan around your weaknesses instead of being controlled by them. If you know mornings are when you're strongest, you build your high. You habits around that time. If you know certain environments trigger your worst patterns, you don't just hope to resist. You strategize to avoid. You don't wait for motivation. You build structure that keeps you consistent even when motivation fades. The truth is, life will throw distractions at you. Challenges will arise. People will misunderstand you. But a strategic mind doesn't panic, it pivots. It doesn't complain, it recalculates. Setbacks don't derail a strategic person because they already factored setbacks into their mindset. They don't expect ease. They expect resistance and still plan to win. That's the difference between hoping things go well and preparing to overcome what doesn't. Strategic thinkers are also masters of pattern recognition. They don't just see the surface, they see the system. They don't just notice problems, they identify root causes. They ask better questions. Instead of why is this happening to me, they ask, what is this trying to teach me? They look for leverage, for timing, for sequence. They know that doing the right thing at the wrong time is still a misstep. Strategy isn't just about doing, it's about when, how, and why. To build this kind of thinking, you have to slow down, Speed is a killer of strategy. When you move too fast, you miss nuance, you overlook details, you make impulsive decisions that create long-term damage. Strategic thinking requires margin, time to analyze, time to reflect, time to observe the battlefield before making a move. That's how you build power that lasts, not just power that shows up temporarily. Strategic thinkers also don't just plan for success. They prepare for resistance. They play out scenarios in their minds. What if this fails? What if the market shifts? What if the person I'm counting on quits? They build contingencies, not because they're paranoid, but because they're prepared. That's not fear, it's foresight. That's not negativity, it's wisdom. And lastly, strategic thinking requires alignment. Your thoughts, actions, and values must all move in the same direction. You can't strategize for success and live with habits that sabotage it. You can't speak vision and move in confusion. Strategy demands you be intentional with your time, your energy, and your associations. It's not just about having a plan, it's about becoming the kind of person who can carry that plan to completion. Strategy doesn't mean control, it means clarity. It doesn't mean you avoid risk, it means you take smart risks. It doesn't mean everything goes as planned, it means you never walk into the battlefield blind. Because when you think strategically, you stop reacting to life and start designing it. Relational intelligence is the skill of discerning who belongs in your life, how to engage with them, and when to let go. Most people suffer not because of a lack of potential, but because of misplaced loyalty, unchecked influence, or unwise associations. You can't live a powerful life while being emotionally entangled with people who drain your energy, blur your vision, or provoke your lower self. The relationships you allow are either building your future or breaking your focus. Some people enter your life with the right smile, but the wrong spirit. They say the right words, but their presence causes confusion. Relational intelligence is the ability to see beyond the performance and sense the pattern. It's not about judging people, it's about discerning alignment. You don't need 1,000 friends. You need a circle that reflects your values, elevates your mindset, and protects your peace. When you have relational intelligence, you understand that not everyone deserves equal access to you. Access must be earned, trust must be tested, energy must be evaluated. Just because someone was in your past doesn't mean they belong in your present. And just because someone is available doesn't mean they're qualified. People will either help you evolve or tempt you to devolve. And without this awareness, you'll keep dragging dead weight into your next season. You must also recognize that connection alone isn't enough. Compatibility matters, shared values matter, shared purpose matters, chemistry may create spark, but character is what sustains connection. A relationship that looks good on the outside but rots on the inside will silently sabotage your progress. Relational intelligence allows you to examine the fruit, not just the facade. Another part of this skill is understanding role clarity. Confusion begins when roles are undefined. Some people are seasonal, some are situational, some are foundational. The mistake is treating temporary people like permanent fixtures. You can appreciate someone's contribution without forcing them into a place they were never meant to occupy. Every connection doesn't have to be deep. Every interaction doesn't have to lead to something more. Wisdom is knowing the difference between a visitor and a builder. Relational intelligence also teaches you boundaries. Without boundaries, relationships become blurred and chaotic. You start overgiving, over-explaining, overextending, trying to keep the peace while losing yourself. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're gates to protect what matters. They define what you tolerate, what you value, and what you won't entertain. People who respect your boundaries respect your growth. People who challenge your boundaries are often threatened by it. You must also be willing to audit your relationships regularly. Growth creates friction, and sometimes what once fit you no longer feeds you. That doesn't mean someone is bad. It just means you've outgrown the dynamic. The person you're becoming may not align with the people you once needed. And if you cling to expired connections, you delay your elevation. Emotional loyalty to unhealthy people will cost you opportunities, clarity, and peace. This kind of intelligence includes emotional discipline. In heated moments, can you respond with grace instead of aggression? Can you disagree without disconnecting? Can you communicate without attacking? Most relationships break not from major events, but from repeated immaturity. Napping instead of speaking, shutting down instead of solving. Relational intelligence is knowing how to handle emotions in a way that doesn't cause more harm. You also become fluent in listening. Most people hear to reply, not to understand, but deep connection requires presence. When someone feels heard, they feel valued. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to care enough to be fully there. Listening is not passive. It's one of the most powerful tools for intimacy, influence, and healing. Another element is knowing when to walk away, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Some doors must close for your soul to breathe. Some goodbyes are the most loving thing you can give to both parties. Relational intelligence means you don't chase people who refuse to grow. You don't beg for connection where there's constant disrespect. You don't shrink yourself to fit into places you've already outgrown. Walking away isn't weakness. It's self-respect in motion. This intelligence also teaches you how to nurture the right connections. Not every relationship needs cutting. Some need cultivation, but you must be present, consistent, and intentional. Great relationships aren't built by accident. They're built through investment, communication, forgiveness, and shared vision. Relational intelligence means you know where to pour your energy and where to pull it back. Ultimately, your relational world mirrors your inner world. If your life is filled with drama, it's often because your internal standards are unclear. But when you raise your standard, your relationships shift. You stop tolerating dysfunction. You stop entertaining confusion. You start attracting people who respect your clarity, honor your space, and challenge you to grow. Because in the end, your connections either amplify your purpose or distract you from it. Adaptability is the skill that keeps you alive when life changes direction without warning. It's the mental flexibility to pivot without panic, to adjust without breaking, to shift your strategy while keeping your mission intact. The people who win long-term are rarely the ones who are the most talented. They're the ones who are the most adaptable. They evolve when others resist. They stay fluid when others freeze. They adjust to new seasons instead of clinging to outdated methods. Life doesn't ask for your permission before it changes. Markets shift. People leave. Plans collapse. What once worked stops working. If you can't adapt, you'll find yourself stuck in strategies that no longer produce results, relationships that no longer align with your values, and routines that no longer support your growth. Adaptability is not weakness. It's wisdom in action. It's the decision to respond to change with creativity instead of fear. Many people resist change because it threatens their sense of control. They want certainty, comfort, and routine. But comfort is a silent killer of growth. The very thing you're clinging to for security may be the very thing holding you back from your next level. Adaptable people understand that discomfort is a signal of transformation. When the familiar becomes too tight, they don't retreat, they evolve. Adaptability begins with mindset. If your mind is rigid, your future will be limited. Adaptable people don't tie their identity to a single method or role. They understand that who they are is bigger than any one plan. They stay anchored in their values but flexible in their approach. They don't fear reinvention. They embrace it. They understand that the only thing guaranteed in life is that nothing stays the same. So they stop fighting the tide and learn how to swim with it. Adaptability also shows up in how you handle feedback. When someone challenges your idea or points out a weakness, do you get defensive or do you get curious? Do you shut down or level up? Adaptable people don't take correction as an insult. They see it as insight. They're not married to their ego. They're committed to improvement. They're willing to ask, what do I need to change, instead of hiding behind excuses. Another dimension of adaptability is the ability to navigate different environments. Whether you're stepping into a new role, moving to a new city, or adjusting to a different team dynamic, your ability to observe, learn, and integrate quickly will determine your success. It's not just about surviving the environment, it's about learning how to influence it. Adaptable people study the room before trying to run it. They learn the rhythm before they change the music. Adaptability also demands emotional intelligence. Change brings uncertainty. It brings delay, frustration, and sometimes grief. If you don't learn how to process those emotions, you'll sabotage your own progress. Adaptable people know how to regulate their internal world even when the external world feels chaotic. They don't collapse under the weight of unpredictability. They rise with strategy. They know that emotions are real but not always right, so they feel deeply but move wisely. In leadership, adaptability is critical. A leader who can't adjust is a liability to the people they serve. Leaders who cling to old systems during new seasons lead people into frustration, burnout, and stagnation. But leaders who adapt model resilience. They create a culture of flexibility and innovation. They give their teams permission to evolve. They say, here's where we're going, and here's how we may have to shift to get there. That kind of leadership builds trust. Adaptability is also vital in personal relationships. People change. Their needs, communication styles, and emotional capacities evolve over time. If you don't adapt, you'll miss the growth in the people around you. You'll try to love someone the way they needed 5 years ago instead of how they need today. You'll communicate based on old assumptions instead of current understanding. Adaptable people stay present. They stay aware. They update their connection, not just their contact list. In your own growth journey, adaptability is the engine behind transformation. It gives you permission to let go of what no longer serves you. The habits, beliefs, labels, and expectations that once helped you may now be hurting you. But instead of fearing the unknown, you embrace the opportunity to become more. You reframe failure as feedback. You reframe change as a challenge to grow stronger, sharper, and more effective. Adaptability doesn't mean you change who you are. It means you expand who you are. It's not about compromise. It's about evolution. It's about having the courage to leave behind the version of you that can't survive your future. It's about staying light on your feet but heavy with purpose. Because when the world shifts, and it always will, the person who is adaptable doesn't just survive. They rise, reinvent, and lead. Conflict navigation is one of the most essential skills a person can develop because conflict is inevitable. It will show up in your relationships, your business, your family, and even your own mind. But conflict itself isn't the problem. How you handle it is. Most people either avoid it or explode in it. They either suppress their thoughts to keep the peace or unleash their anger and destroy the connection. Neither option works long term. What's required is the maturity to confront with clarity and the wisdom to do it without causing unnecessary damage. People assume that avoiding conflict keeps relationships peaceful. In reality, it creates silent wars, tension builds, resentment grows, and what's left unsaid starts to rot the foundation of trust. You can't grow with people you can't be honest with. You can't build anything meaningful with people you walk on eggshells around. Conflict, when handled correctly, isn't a threat, it's a tool. It clears the air, it builds understanding, it makes relationships stronger, not weaker. Effective conflict navigation begins with emotional control. The moment you let your emotions lead the conversation, you've lost your influence. Emotions are real, but in conflict, they must be guided by values, not impulses. You may feel the urge to defend, to attack, to win, but real power comes from the ability to stay grounded, to listen first, and to respond rather than react. The person who can stay composed in chaos always has the upper hand. Listening is one of the most underused weapons in conflict. Most people listen to defend, not to understand. They wait for their turn to speak, not to receive what's being said. But deep listening creates space for clarity. It shows respect, even in disagreement. And when someone feels heard, they're far more likely to soften their stance. You don't have to agree with everything someone says, but when you hear them fully, you give the conversation a chance to breathe. Clarity is also critical. Say what you mean. Be specific about the issue, not vague or passive, aggressive. People can't fix what they don't fully understand. If you're hurt, say why. If you're frustrated, explain what expectation was missed. Don't make it personal, make it practical. Attack the problem, not the person. The goal of conflict navigation isn't to prove who's right. It's to uncover what's true and fix what's broken. Timing matters just as much as tone. Bringing up a difficult issue at the wrong time can make everything worse. If someone is tired, emotionally overwhelmed, or distracted, that is not the time to bring up conflict. Strategic timing is a sign of maturity. Ask yourself, is this the right moment for this conversation? Am I in the right headspace to have it? Are they? If the answer is no, wait. A delayed conversation is often better than a destructive one. It's also important to check your intent before entering conflict. Are you trying to heal or trying to win? Are you speaking to build trust or to tear someone down? Are you confronting because you care about resolution or because you want to release anger? Conflict navigated with a wrong motive will only multiply pain. But when your heart is set on restoration, your words will be shaped by that mission. Boundaries are crucial during conflict. If someone starts to disrespect you, raise their voice, or manipulate the situation, you have the right to pause the conversation. Healthy conflict does not include character assassination, yelling, or controlling behavior. And if you're the one losing control, be honest about it. Take a break. Come back when you can lead the conversation with composure. No one wins when the conversation turns into a battle of egos. Another key is knowing when to apologize and when to forgive. Saying, "I'm sorry," doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. It shows that your pride doesn't come before the relationship. On the flip side, offering forgiveness doesn't mean you approve of what was done. It means you're choosing not to let offense rule your heart. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, but it always means freedom. And sometimes conflict reveals incompatibility. That's when maturity means you part ways with peace, not bitterness. You recognize that resolution doesn't always mean agreement. It can also mean acceptance. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into your next season. But even the ending of a relationship can be navigated with grace if your motive is clean and your approach is honorable. In any area of life, business, family, friendship, your ability to handle conflict will either open doors or close them. People trust those who can confront with compassion. They follow leaders who bring clarity in tension, not chaos. Conflict is inevitable, but destruction is optional. When you learn to navigate conflict with strength and humility, you gain more than resolution. You gain influence, wisdom, and deeper connection. Self-education is the discipline of taking ownership of your growth without waiting for permission, approval, or a formal system to validate your potential. It's the mindset that says, if I don't know it, I will learn it. If I haven't mastered it, I will practice until I do. If no one will teach me, I will teach myself. The most successful people in the world are not the most taught. They are the most teachable. They've made the decision that their future is too important to outsource their development. There is a dangerous lie that many people still believe, that education stops after school, that once you get the degree, pass the test, or walk across the stage, the learning ends. But life is not a classroom you graduate from. It's a battlefield that rewards the prepared. The world is changing too fast. The competition is too sharp. And the opportunities are too rare for you to remain stagnant. If you're not constantly learning, you're silently falling behind. Self-education puts the power back in your hands. It frees you from the limitations of formal systems. It breaks the myth that only certain people, in certain institutions, with certain resources, are allowed to rise. With a phone, a library card, or a connection to the internet, you have access to more wisdom than kings and queens had just a century ago. The only barrier left is hunger, and the only question that matters is, are you willing to feed your mind like your life depends on it? Because it does. What you know determines how you move. It shapes what you see. It influences what you believe is possible. Ignorance isn't innocence. It's a prison. And too many people are locked in cycles of poverty, brokenness, and frustration, not because they're not capable, but because they stopped learning. They stopped growing. They stopped exposing themselves to the ideas, systems, and tools that could take their life to the next level. Self-education is about being obsessed with mastery, not just learning for the sake of learning, but learning to build, to lead, to change, to create. It means reading with purpose, watching with discernment, asking better questions, listening to understand, not just to consume. The self-educated don't just gather information, they extract application. They don't just study, they execute. This discipline also demands humility. To teach yourself, you must first admit you don't know. And for many people, ego stands in the way of elevation. They'd rather appear smart than become wise. But self-education requires you to be a student first, even if you're already a leader. Even if people already look up to you. The moment you stop learning is the moment your influence starts dying. The moment you start coasting is the moment your edge begins dulling. Self-education is also the art of strategic learning. Not all information is useful. Not every trend deserves your attention. You must be intentional about what you consume. You must curate your influences. You must filter the voices you allow into your mind. Study your craft. Study human behavior. Study wealth. Study history. Study leadership. Study communication. And study yourself, your patterns, your mindset, your emotional triggers. Self-awareness is one of the highest forms of self-education. You also must build the discipline to learn when it's inconvenient. Most people stop learning because they're tired, busy, or distracted. But the ones who rise create time to grow. They read while others scroll. They study while others sleep. They ask questions while others pretend to know it all. They show up to life like a student in every room they enter. That mindset compounds. It builds wisdom, and wisdom builds power. There will be seasons where no one is teaching you, no one is mentoring you, and no one is handing you the blueprint. That's when self-education becomes the most important thing in your life. That's when you must take initiative. Dig deeper, try, fail, adjust, learn again. You become your own university. You build your own curriculum. You decide that stagnation is unacceptable and ignorance is not your identity. The beautiful thing is, the people who commit to self-education eventually outgrow the ones who had every advantage, because real education is not about credentials, it's about capacity. It's about how fast you can adapt, how deeply you can think, how well you can solve problems, and how boldly you can take action. Those skills are not handed out in degrees. They're developed in the trenches. In silence, in books, in trial and error, in reflection and repetition. The greatest return on investment is not in stocks or real estate. It's in your mind. The more you learn, the more you earn, not just in money, but in influence, clarity, peace, and purpose. When you commit to self-education, you no longer depend on the world to equip you. You become your own source. You become dangerous because knowledge in the hands of the disciplined becomes transformation. And transformation becomes legacy. Resilience mastery is the art of bouncing back stronger, not just surviving adversity, but transforming through it. Life will hit you in expected losses, painful delays, closed doors, betrayal, failure. It doesn't ask for your permission. It doesn't wait for your readiness. It comes fast, loud, and uninvited. But the people who rise in life are not the ones who avoid pain. They're the ones who know how to turn pressure into power, pain into purpose, and breakdowns into breakthroughs. Resilience is more than endurance. It's the mindset that says, this will not break me, this will build me. It's what keeps you walking when everything in you wants to quit. It's not pretending things are easy. It's choosing not to let hard things stop you. Most people fold not because they're weak, but because they never trained themselves to endure. They mistake comfort for peace, and the moment life disrupts their routine, they collapse. But the strongest among us are the ones who use disruption as training. You don't become resilient in comfort. You become resilient in pressure, in loss, in uncertainty. It's when you're misunderstood but stay focused. It's when your heart is broken but your purpose stays intact. It's when your dream is delayed but your discipline doesn't die. Resilience is forged in the moments where giving up seems reasonable, but you keep going anyway. Not because it's easy, but because you've decided your future is worth fighting for. Resilience begins with a decision to get back up, a decision to keep showing up, a decision to keep moving forward without needing applause, comfort, or perfect circumstances. Some people spend their whole life waiting for a time when it won't be hard. That time never comes. Resilient people don't wait for easy. They master how to thrive in hard. This kind of strength comes from how you talk to yourself in the storm. When everything is shaking, your inner voice becomes your compass. Are you speaking faith or feeding fear? Are you rehearsing defeat or declaring destiny? Are you replaying the loss or remembering your why? The words you say to yourself when no one else is watching determine whether you break or build. Yourself. Ak is either fueling your resilience or draining it. Resilience also requires perspective. You have to learn how to frame your pain. You don't ask, why is this happening to me? You ask, what is this trying to teach me? You don't let failure become your identity. You treat it as information. Feedback, training, growth. Every setback holds wisdom, if you're willing to dig for it. But most people miss the lesson because they're too focused on the wound. The truth is, the most resilient people are often the most wounded. Not because they love pain, but because they've been through enough of it to know that pain doesn't get the final say. They've been knocked down before, and they learned how to get back up. That's what makes them dangerous. That's what gives them authority. They don't just preach strength. They've lived it. Their resilience wasn't bought. It was earned. Resilience mastery also means learning how to regulate your emotions. You don't ignore them, but you don't let them drive either. You feel them, process them, and keep moving. When grief hits, you sit with it, but you don't make it your home. When anger rises, you acknowledge it, but you don't let it make your decisions. Resilient people have learned how to carry heavy emotions without letting those emotions carry them. Another layer of resilience is your ability to stay grounded in your identity, because life will try to define you by your losses. It will try to shrink you down to your last mistake. But when you know who you are, no failure can label you. No storm can shake you out of your purpose. You rise not because life is easy, but because your identity is rooted. You know that your worth doesn't change, even when your circumstances do. You also build resilience by surrounding yourself with people who speak strength into you. You need a circle that doesn't just sympathize, they sharpen. People who remind you of your power when you forget. People who challenge your excuses and call you higher. Resilience isn't always a solo act. Sometimes it's built in the company of those who refuse to let you stay down. Every time you get back up, you're training your mind. You're showing yourself that you can be trusted, that you can be counted on, that your destiny is stronger than your disappointment. Over time, this becomes your edge. Your story becomes your strength, and your scars become a map for others who are trying to find their way through the same fire. Mastering resilience doesn't mean you never feel pain. It means pain doesn't paralyze you. It means setbacks don't steal your song. It means delays don't destroy your belief. You get stronger, sharper, wiser, and in a world full of people who quit when it gets hard, your resilience becomes your rebellion. Your persistence becomes your legacy. Your endurance becomes your weapon.